It is 9:51. We are in Zoom. The controller asked for a Zoom link. We have provided it.
It just came back.
She's not here, so we are calling her. I'm taking a picture of the Zoom. Maybe she'll come. Not getting an answer.
Sorry, the mailbox is full and there is not enough space to leave a message. To send a message to another subscriber, enter the area code and phone number of the person you are trying to reach. Or press star to enter your...
Okay. So let's proceed. The Board of Estimate meeting for Tuesday, December 29th, 2020 is called to order. Roll call, please.
Controller Reynolds. Controller Reynolds. Council President Copeland.
Here.
And Mayor Patterson Howard.
Here.
Thank you.
We can proceed with the agenda.
Yes, ma'am. We're starting with item number 1, resolutions approving ordinances. Item number 1 is requesting that the controller continue employee payroll until 2021 budget is adopted.
So moved. Seconded. On the question? Hearing none. Roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 2 is amending ordinance number 8 adopted July 8th, 2020, entitled an ordinance approving the mayor to enter into an agreement with 4.0 standard ADA Cool Nerd.
Authorizing, I think you had to say?
I'm sorry.
Ordinance authorizing?
An ordinance, I'll repeat, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, I'm sorry, I'll repeat, thank you. Number 2 is amending ordinance number 8, adopted July 8th, entitled an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with 4.0 standard DBA Cool Nerd.
So moved. Seconded. On the question? Hearing none. Roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
And Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 3 is amending ordinance number 12, adopted September 9th, 2020, entitled an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with 4.0 standard DBA Cool Nerd.
So moved. Seconded. On the question? Hearing none. Roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 4 is authorizing the transfer of funds within the Department of Veteran Services for the amount of $4,000.
So moved. Seconded. On the question?
I just want to commend the Veteran Services Director for her good work in service of our veterans. So that's all.
Thank you so much. She's done an incredible job since coming. We've served hundreds of veterans in just a few months, and this transfer will allow her to purchase some basic technology to continue to expand the services to veterans. This comes from a savings from the Memorial Day Parade and some other veteran services that we did not have to expend because we did not have those events. And so it is monies that were budgeted and saved and are now being used before the year is out. Thank you. Roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
And Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, item number 5 is an ordinance requesting permission to add the position of sergeant within the Department of Public Safety.
So moved. Seconded. On the question? Hearing.
Remind me, this was the one that wasn't accounted for, right?
Yes, so,
Right.
do you want to explain?
You can explain.
Okay, so when an ordinance was passed to get a captain, and when the ordinance was passed for a captain, it was mistakenly, the sergeant position was mistakenly taken off. And so now they were down to 18 sergeants instead of 19. And so this was just to put it back to 19 sergeants.
To reestablish.
Yes,
I mean, and it's important that we have the proper complement of supervisors to patrol, because we have to make sure that, you know, especially in this time of police reform, that we have supervisors on the street that are there to train, support, and supervise their police officers. So we need to make sure that this position passes. Thank you so much. And it does not, it is no increase to the budget. We're
That's
just
correct.
moving monies around.
Yes.
That's it. No increase. We actually have 27 vacancies right now in our department. So roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Council President Copeland, how say you?
Aye.
Thank you. And Mayor Patterson Howard?
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 6 is requesting the establishment of a give grant, excuse me, budget expense code and a give grant revenue budget code to the Department of Public Safety 2020 and 2020.
Aye. I mean, seconded on the question. Look, I was here till 1:30 this morning working, so I'm a little tired.
Right. Mulligan.
Yeah. On the question, again, we receive about $192,000 a year from the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. We were scheduled to receive $220,000 for 2018-19, and $192,000 for 2019-2020. That money, those monies are still sitting at the state, waiting to be sent here to the city of Mount Vernon. And we want to make sure that there is a proper revenue code and a proper expense code. What happens is the expenses are often shown, but the revenues that come from our grants to cover these expenditures are unfortunately not shown. And so we want to make sure that when this revenue comes into the city, that it is put in the proper accounting code so that we can show that the monies have come in. The controller did not sign any of the vouchers for these payments for these grants. We went back and did the legislation for the acceptance of these grants, and we did new contracts with the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. I have signed off on the contracts. I have signed off on the vouchers, and this money should be received. We just want to make sure it goes into the proper space so it can be accounted for. So. Roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 7 is authorizing the transfer of funds within the Department of Assessment for the sum of $12,000.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? Hearing none, roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, item number 8 is requesting permission to defund the 2 positions of assessment clerk and fund 2 positions of senior assessment clerk within the Department of Assessment.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? This is just a reclassification of positions, and it is being done out of the existing budget with no additional expansion or increase in the department's budget. So, roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 9 is authorizing an escrow account for the review of the rezoning application for 209-213 South 3rd Avenue.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? Hearing none, roll call.
Council President Copeland.
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 10 is an ordinance authorizing the city of Mount Vernon to implement the official payroll policies and procedures.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? Hearing none, roll call. Did you have anything, President Copeland?
No.
Okay.
Unless-
No, I thought you were getting ready to say something.
I was getting ready to say something.
Okay,
But I'll pass.
all right.
Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 11 is under salary resolutions. Number 11 states, Department of Assessment Clerk / Senior Assessment Clerk.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? Hearing none. Roll call.
Council President Copeland,
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 12 is the Police Department Sergeant.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question? Hearing none. Roll call.
Council President Copeland,
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
And item number 13 is under Police Department for Senior Keyboard Specialist / Record Clerk, or Record Clerk, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question?
Just want to clarify, this was a reclassification ordinance that was done a month ago, I believe, but we didn't prepare a salary resolution, so now it's on.
And it is a $6,000 savings to the
Yes,
city. So
yes.
this is a $6,000 savings to the city in the reclassification of this position. So this is a savings.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call.
Council President Copeland,
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Under tax review settlements, item number 14 is settling tax review proceedings for 0 East. I'm sorry.
So I move that we take 14 to 22 as a group.
I second it. Question?
Roll call on it, Madam. If I may.
Roll call.
And Council President Copeland, I'll say you on the group motion.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. And I will read items number 14 through 21.
22.
22. Thank you, ma'am. 14 through 22. Item number 14 is settling tax review proceedings for 0 East 3rd Street, Gregory Boyby, for the sum of $13,099.41. Number 15 is settling tax review proceedings for 504 Gramerton Avenue, 504 Gramerton LLC, for the sum of $3,959.80. Item number 16 is settling tax review proceedings for 23 North Columbus Avenue, Lorraine Arms Apartments, for the sum of $88,788.63. Item number 17 is settling tax review proceedings for 50 Bond Street, for 2 Oak Realty Ltd, for the sum of $14,886.10. Item number 18 is settling tax review proceedings for 150 South Terrace Avenue for Lujan Realty Corp. for the sum of $41,679.93. Item 19 is settling tax review proceedings for 504 Gramerton Avenue, 504 East 3rd Street Corp. for the sum of $29,071.55. And item number 20 is settling tax review proceedings for 23 North Columbus Avenue for Nicholas Palmieri for the sum of $15,904.18. And 21, item number 21 is settling tax review proceedings for 10 South 4th Avenue for Menco LLC for the sum of $7,472.21. And item number 22 is settling tax review proceedings for 21 West Broad Street for 17 West Broad Street Corp. Care of SCI Funeral Service for the sum of $49,755.15. Thus reads the combined motion of 14 through 21
Thank you.
items.
I'm
sorry, and I correct, that's item 14 through
I don't
22.
know. This is what.
So, before I move,
She has a
move it,
question.
I just had a question. I put 19, the premises. It says petition of 504 East 3rd Street, but it's for the same premise as the prior one? Is there more than one lot? That was my only question.
Well,
Because
that's-
they both say 504 ground.
That's a question.
The process is 504 Bremerton and the petitioner is 504 East Third Street Court. Right, so what's your question?
The business.
No, I thought it was I thought it should have been 504 East Third Street as well, but it's not. You
No,
understand
No,
what I mean? I thought maybe it was a
sometimes,
typo.
sometimes,
So
yeah.
That's why I asked the question. All right, so moved.
Seconded. On the question?
I just want to state that these
Just
tax,
if you could speak loudly.
I just want to say that these tax review settlements are are being done because of the way the city has assessed taxes against certain companies and industries. And so these are basically court-ordered settlements that were entered into due to past practices for tax assessments. I don't know, we may be looking at that, but these are settlements that are much needed, because I know there has been some talk about settling a lot of stuff. But yes, these settlements are in the best interest of the city, given the facts and circumstances as they present themselves to the way tax assessments were done in the past.
I guess one of the biggest challenges that Mount Vernon has experienced is that we have not done a full citywide reassessment of our properties since the 1960s. That's the last time we did a full reassessment. And so while we continue to hear that our assessed property values have gone up, our sales prices have gone up, since we have not done a full assessment as a city of these properties in 60 years, it makes it very, very easy for businesses to come and say that, and homes to come and say that their properties are not worth what they're worth. And the way that the formula is set up, we continue to lose. And so, you know, whether it's in 2021 or 2022, we must find a way. We absolutely have to find a way to get a citywide reassessment of our properties done. Year over year, for the past 5 years, we have lost $2 million or more per year on our assessed property values. Each year, that comes to at least, 4% that we have to make adjustments on, $2 million in adjustments that we have to make in our budget to absorb the loss in property tax assessment. We cannot continue to do that. So whether it's a full reevaluation of the properties throughout Mount Vernon, comprehensive plan, charter review committee, there's a lot that needs to be done, because this is having a great economic impact on the city of Mount Vernon. And so when people see us talking about certiorieries or reductions in taxes for properties, it hits the bottom line of our city's funds directly. But again, there has not been a proper reevaluation of properties since the 1960s. And so this is the process that we're stuck in. We are 7 claims going back right now today as far as 2012. So it's hitting, it hits us now and people have, I believe, up to 7 years to put in claims.
Yeah.
So it's not like people are getting their properties reassessed right now for 2020. We are being hit with reassessments from 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And each year it's probably an expense of $2 million to us in the city. So this is a real challenge going forward. And we're going to have to find a real solution to that. And the only solution that we have is to do a reassessment of the properties.
Which it costs,
It costs.
quite expensive.
No,
Maybe
no.
close to $1 million, I think.
Right, and then this is also, this work has been done by an attorney that has not been paid by the comptroller.
Absolutely.
But she's, for 7 months, but she has continued to represent the city honorably. We should also note that the courts now have indicated, signaled to the city that they are tired of the system that we have in place, and all of they're demanding that either we enter into settlements or we're gonna start receiving judgments. So it's no more kicking the can down the road anymore. The can is finally kicked as far as it can go.
And that's why you're seeing us get hit with 6 and 7 years, because this hasn't been addressed, and the court is saying now settle, else we're going to put judgments on it. And that's gonna come also with interest and penalties and fees and things of that nature. So right now, we are really working to resolve 6-7 years of work that has not been done, and it continues to hit our bottom line. But we promised that we were coming in to clean up, and anytime you start cleaning a room and you start pulling things out of the closet, it gets dirtier, it gets messier, and it becomes more complex before you even get an opportunity to start cleaning. And so that's what we're doing. We're taking care of things that have not been taken care of for years. And it hurts, but it's real and it has to be done. And so that is what we are doing right now. So thank you so much. Like you said, we're losing $2 million a year on these reevaluations and tax certiorieries, $2.5 million a year, but it's going to cost us $1 million to do this. So most people would say, well, if it's only going to cost you $1 million to do it, then why would you allow yourself to lose $2.5 million a year? Because you have to have $1 million to pay for it. You have to have $1 million to pay for it. And so no one wants taxes increase. And if we just pull that out, then, you know, that's 2% right there on the taxes that will be increased on homeowners and businesses that are already overburdened. So we have to find a way to raise this money. We do have in our budget this year money for us to close out audits from 17, 18, and 19 so that we can come current on our audits, because these audits have not been budgeted for and the controller has refused to pay for these audits. So we are budgeting for them. We are pressing forward to get them done so that we can go back out to the bond market and be able to bond and cover for some of these expenses right now that we're carrying in an operating budget, and it is not sustainable. Or we're delaying maintenance on things and the purchase of equipment that we urgently need to operate the city. So it will get a little more complex before it gets better. But when you can either politely stuff things in a closet, which is what we've done as a city government for years. We've stuffed the garbage in the closet so when guests came, the house looked clean. What we're having to do and being forced to do right now is open the closet and take out everything that's been stuffed in there for a long time and clean it for real. And so that's the challenge, but we are up for it.
In the age of COVID and also lack of cooperation from the financial branch.
Absolutely, no cooperating from the
Department,
controller.
it's not a branch.
And-
Oh, right, thank you.
The department, yes,
I stand corrected.
The executive, the legislative, and the judicial. That's Schoolhouse Rock, Channel 7, ABC, when we were growing up. Executive, legislative, and judicial. Finance is a department, not a branch of government.
I agree, I
So-
stand corrected.
With that being said, roll call.
Council President Copeland,
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Item number 23 is requesting the controller to pay M. Zanzini Pipeline Services Incorporated for the sum of $176,158.80.
So moved.
Seconded. On the question, we have our DPW Commissioner, Damani Bush, here with us. We're grateful to have him here. Again, one of the challenges of having to clean up a prior mess is there were contracts that were entered into that were not always brought before the Board of Estimate. And so we are doing that now so that they can be paid and paid appropriately. Do you have anything to say?
So I just want to say thank you to the city council this morning for passing a special meeting to get this legislation approved again. I just want to state for the record that this legislation was previously approved back in April of this year and May of this year. To date, I've tried to submit these vouchers to the controller's office, and she has not provided any information on why she's not paying these bills. I do want to say that as everyone knows, we are under a federal compliance order with the Department of Justice and the EPA to fix our sewers. It is imperative, I'm not going to say imperative, we must pay this contractor to continue the necessary work going forward. If this contractor does not get paid, we cannot continue the necessary work and mandated work as provided by the Department of Justice. So I'm hoping that we're taking the necessary steps that the controller will pay these bills to get the contractor paid as soon as possible.
So I stand corrected. Like you said, these were approved by the council and the Board of Estimate back in April and May. We've tried to submit these vouchers to the controller, and she has refused to pay them. This is part of our EPA and our DEC compliance.
Correct.
For sewers, that this sewer issue has gone back to 2003, and we are trying to rectify it. This is $176,158 in bills that you need paid. It might seem like a lot, but being fined $37,500 a day in penalties, that will take care of this in about 6 days.
Well,
6 days.
to be clear, to be clear, and thank you, Commissioner Bush. So, DEC fines are $37,500 a day, but what we're dealing with here in terms of compliance was, we have to report back on January 6th to Judge Kathy Sabel. Anybody following this, she had indicated that the city should not look for any more extensions, whether that is in providing information, financial information. I think the council and the mayor have all provided the information available to them. And we're still waiting to see if the comptroller has given the attorney all the information available. And then also, the city needs to be in compliance, so I would imagine that if we're not paying the vendor, that could be problematic for us to continue on a course of demonstrating good faith to the court. And the court has gone on the record saying that it has lost patience with the city on, in this case.
So I know, Commissioner Bush, that in the past 5 months, 4 or 5 months, that you've completed probably more work in this compliance order than has been completed in the last 10, 12 years.
That is correct. Over the past 5 months, we've completed 6 out of the 7 priority projects. And there's 1 priority project that's still outstanding, which everyone's aware of, which is Overlook Street. So we're in the process of getting that done. We have the plan ready, but unfortunately, until this contractor is paid, we cannot continue the work.
So in the last 5 months, you've completed 6 out of the 7 critical projects required for compliance around these environmental sewer issues and concerns and how it impacts the outfalls and how the Bronx River and the Hutchinson River, based on reports of being polluted. But we cannot continue to go forward and do this work without the vendors being paid. It has been legislated, it has been approved, the money is in the budget. We cannot continue to sit and play political games with the financial future of Mount Vernon at risk, as well as the environment of our community and surrounding communities being put in jeopardy. So thank you for the hard work you're doing. I know it is not easy, I know it is frustrating, and I know that one of the things that the controller always reports is that we don't hand in bills. I looked yesterday at 3 emails that came from the controller. You've sent 3 requests for meetings to submit bills. It took a while for her to respond. She gave you a December 31st appointment. She then moved that to January 4th and has now moved that appointment to January 8th. Again, these are critical bills that you were trying to submit for payment that you have a hard time submitting. And if you can't submit the bills, then they can't be processed, they can't be paid. So this, I know you're weary. I know it's very tiring, but I appreciate your efforts. And most importantly, I appreciate the professionalism in which you work and you continue to do your job.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So thank you. We call for a vote.
Council President Copeland, how say you?
Aye.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 24 is under budget presentation. Excuse me. The mayor will be presenting the fiscal year 2021 budget to the members of the Board of Estimate.
Not the budget, the annual
Estimate.
Annual
Estimate.
I'm sorry, we'll correct that to
I'm
annual
sorry.
estimate
That's us.
for the record.
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Please?
Yes, will we look forward to her?
Oh. Sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
to the city council president as well.
Yes. We'll put
Why
one
is this one?
in place with the controller and we'll bring it downstairs. Since she has not found it important enough to come upstairs for the Board of Estimate meeting, which is standard, or join by Zoom or phone. So, this has been a very hard year. As everyone knows, it's been a hard year not only for Mount Vernon, but in the region, across the country and across the world, as COVID-19 has upended our day-to-day lives, has upended our economies, and made it very challenging. We have a very real and additional challenge here in Mount Vernon in preparing the 2021 budget. We have not been able to get regular financials, accurate financials and expenses, revenues and expenses from the controller's office since we started here in the city of Mount Vernon. In July, I requested, because we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with the state controller's office for preparing the budget and meeting the budget deadline. And we did everything that we could on the administrative end, and even in working with our city council to accomplish this. All of our departments and department heads had given us their draft budget and wish list by August 31st. We had that done. We had put together a draft budget. We had put together the numbers on our end, on the administrative branch. We spoke to the council. We received their numbers. We received the salary and appropriations from the finance office for their office. But what we did not receive is actual revenues, up-to-date revenues, up until that point revenues for 2020, nor did we receive actual, well, we received some expenditures. We received an expenditure report through September. We received an expenditure report in October or November through September of this year. We received it in a format that was not very usable, that we had to extract that information. We had to balance it, and we had to put it in a different Excel sheet. And what that report that was provided to us on 2020 expenditures from the controller showed us that while she said we had overspent our 2020 budget, it actually showed through the end of the third quarter that instead of expending 75% of the budget, which we would have been expected to spend by the end of the third quarter, I think we had only expended about 66% of the budget. And that was about a $10 million savings in expense. So based on the controller's report that she provided to us and to the courts that we received through the courts, there was, through September 2020, almost a $10 million savings year-to-date of this administration in expenditures. Based on, you can't make up a $10 million savings. $10 million savings is a $10 million savings. And since, you know, she pays minimal bills even in the final quarter, and we have a hard time submitting them, I would expect that there would be continued savings in that budget in the final quarter of this year. What we did is we went back to 2019 revenue numbers that she provided us. She provided us with 2019 revenue numbers through September. She had not provided us with 2020 revenue numbers in any detail. And we used the 2019 expenditures, and we created a budget. We called around the state. We called the state controller's office. We called the county clerk's office. We spoke with our external auditors, and we looked at expenditures and fiscal reports that we had received through 2016. We worked with each of our departments and utilized the numbers that they had expended year to date. We used some historical numbers that we were able to cull together, and we put together this draft annual estimate that we present today. So I want to say this to you. We've had to make a lot of budgetary assumptions and projections. We recognize that the importance of reliable financial information, including a 3-year expense and revenue comparison, adopted versus actuals, current fiscal year budgetary markers, budget variances, economic threats due to COVID-19. This administration requested detailed financial information from the controller and have not received it. So what we're presenting today, summary of the budget is $117,538,246. It provides deep cuts to critical service areas while maintaining basic several service levels. The budget attempts to take steps to adjust the dramatic change in the economic realities caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Many of the city's major revenue sources have been impacted by the pandemic and have seen shortfalls anticipated for the 2021 budget. Parking revenues, state aid has been reduced by 20%. Tax tertiaries, which we just talked about, the reduction in assessed valuation. School tax revenue, we used to get interest on school taxes when we collected them of about $500,000 a year. Now that the school district has had to take over their collection of school taxes, that's revenue that we have lost and been impacted by. Those were challenges. So we have no fund balance that we're aware of because we have not been able to get that information from the controller. We are not able to go out and bond in the market because we do not have a credit rating, which was removed in 2019, and not receiving information from the controller in probably one of the most economic challenging times that our city and country have seen in the past decade and maybe more. We put this budget together. We know that we can't rely on the homeowners to balance this budget. And so we continue to implore the controller to provide the desperately needed financial information that we need to complete this budget process. The estimated proposed tax levy at this time is 4.37%. It took a lot of cutting in services and in vacant positions to get to this point, but it also will require for us to push revenues. With cuts in, with increases, mandated increases in expenses, we cannot just continue to cut services in order to balance the budget. And that is what's been done. That is what's been done. You can only cut but so much until you're not able to provide the services that our residents pay for and deserve. The city has to find ways to push and expand our revenue base. And so what we've done to improve revenue here in Mount Vernon is we've included an $1.1 million projection, increased projection on gain of tax of acquired property. Mount Vernon has several hundred foreclosed properties that we've been sitting on and have not had an auction since 2016. And so we are calling on the controller, who is a member of the real estate committee in Mount Vernon, to work with the real estate committee and an independent group of Mount Vernon realtors to put together an audit, as well as to open up opportunities for our residents and open up an auction, auction. We haven't had an auction since 2016. An auction is a very real way to take foreclosed properties that the city has just been holding on to and put it back on the tax rolls, and it allows us to raise money immediately, as well as to return these vacant properties to the tax rolls of the city of Mount Vernon. So that is one thing that we are looking to do. We are not landlords, we should not be landlords, and holding on to these properties is a year-over-year loss in tax revenues, as well as it has increased the liabilities, because then the city really becomes, adds to the blight. The city adds to the blight by having abandoned and vacant properties sitting in the city. So the controller superintends these properties. She's always very clear about that. And so she has to work with our real estate committee, who stands ready, willing, and able to return these properties to the city's tax roll. Sales tax and use, we reduced from 2019, 2020 by 150,000. This is a conservative estimate. We have seen a great rebounding in our sales tax revenue, even in the midst of COVID. But we did reduce the numbers from 2020, and we increased it by about 25,000 over 2019. Real property transfer taxes. We increased this revenue number by 200,000. Mount Vernon houses are selling like hotcakes, and they're selling at higher values. And so we need to take advantage of this very good seller's market that is happening right now as people seek to move from very crowded urban cities into less densely populated suburban communities and to purchase houses. Mount Vernon's housing market is on fire. We need the controller to collect the property transfer taxes. We underestimated the potential of property taxes that we could receive from this. But we have a very, very strong housing market right now. But we need the controller, again, to collect these taxes. We have 48 companies that have complained because she is not collecting the taxes on purchases of houses, and it makes it very hard for them to finally close on these properties. Collection of delinquent fees on school taxes, we zeroed out this revenue number, which had been revenue for 500,000 for many years, but because we are no longer collecting school taxes. We reduced electrical permits and fees and building department fees by about 150,000 because of COVID, and we're just not sure how much construction might be happening, so we wanted to be conservative and reduce that number. We reduced parking fee and permit fees by $350,000. The budget numbers of $3.5 million used in 2019 and 2020. We used the numbers in 2020 because that's the estimate we received from 2019, but as we've been able to go and do research, we haven't seen a collection at that level. We do believe that 3.15 million is the more accurate number, but that's still a reduction in 350,000 in revenue. Emergency tenant protection charges, we've increased by $50,000 that revenue. We have 5,920 emergency protected tenant units here in Mount Vernon. The fee on them had been $10 per year. The state increased that fee to $20 a year. So it's really a wash. It's the same revenue that we receive in will be sent to the state. So it has no real impact on the tax levy. Rental of real property, we increased it by $220,000 based on actual revenue collected through the city as per the controller's fiscal report of 2019. So some of these vacant properties are being rented out to residents, and this is the money that has been received. So we have a $750,000 revenue number in there. Building and alteration permits, we reduced by $100,000 again, based on a report provided by the controller in 2019. We want to be a little more conservative with that amount. Fines and forfeited criminal court fees, we reduced this number by $850,000. Based on the fact of COVID, the courts have been closed. They are not processing the same number of cases right now. They're not collecting their fines or levying fines at the same rate. And so we have to be very conservative in this revenue projection based on our conversation with the courts. Sales of real property tax, we put in $2.3 million in revenue for sales of real property. We have 3 major commercial properties here in Mount Vernon. Well, I guess a block of 3. We have YMCA on 2nd Avenue. We have a block of 5 properties on 3rd Street and on 4th Avenue. And then we have property on the Question Parkway, all that have offers on them. Some of these commercial properties have been sitting on the city's rolls, not on the tax rolls, but have been sitting on the city's property list for over a decade. We've not collected any taxes on them. The city is not maintaining these buildings. It again is contributing to blight in our community, and we have legitimate offers for the sales of these properties so that we can do redevelopment in these neighborhoods and revitalize the community. There is a difference. Let me be very clear, because some fear mongers want to say this is about gentrification. There's a difference between gentrification and revitalization. The projects, many of the projects that we're looking at in these areas are projects that will bring workforce housing, and other people would call it affordable housing, to these neighborhoods, as well as retail spaces and critical services that these neighborhoods need, as well as parking. We are not looking to cut any deals that help hurt Mount Vernon, but we are definitely trying to bring economic revitalization to Mount Vernon. The other option right now is to continue to blight these neighborhoods, continue to have these properties, commercial properties go unused and deteriorating in, and I'm going to say this again, largely in communities and neighborhoods of color here in Mount Vernon. So we have to make sure that we are equitable in the way that we look at properties and allow properties to deteriorate in Mount Vernon. All of these properties are for the most part south of the railroad cut, and they are available for sale. So these three properties combined would bring $3.8 million to the city. We need 4 votes on the city council to dispose of these properties. We do not have any municipal use for them. As someone who has been a YMCA professional for 16 years and very committed to services, the city of Mount Vernon is not in the condition and not in the fiscal position right now to rehab the YMCA property to the level that we need it to be able to operate for our community. And even if we just have the money for the renovation, we do not have the money for the operation. That building alone, through insurance, through staffing, through utilities, through liabilities, will cost over $1.5 million a year easily to operate. And I can tell you, as the former executive director of that property operated largely on grants, not on the support of Mount Vernon residents. Many of the residents wanted free programs and reduced programs. We could not afford to operate it. So the city cannot continue to operate that building. We don't have the money. But there are opportunities to do other things on these properties, which will bring them back on the tax rolls and provide critical services that we need here in the city of Mount Vernon. Transfer from the water fund, we reduced the earnings by $850,000. There were unaudited transfers in 2016, 17, and 18 of water department funds. And you can't transfer monies without there being an audit. This is supposed to be a transfer of money that happens after an audit. And I can tell you that in the second half of 2019, monies were transferred without any fiscal thought or responsibility from the water department to the city. They were called found monies. They were not found. You cannot transfer monies that have not been audited. And we've transferred too much money from the water department to the city at a great loss to the water department for other expenses that they have incurred. And so we, in order for them to recoup some of those losses, and we have to reduce the amount of money that we're budgeting. We are losing $1.4 million in revenue from the state, from the aid to municipalities. We're losing $1.4 million in that. And so there's a real decrease in $2 million in revenue this year to the city. And we cannot depend on the fund balance. We know back in 2017, the last accurate accounting of the fund balance was in excess of $15 million. We've heard that it's about 19, but let's say conservatively it was 15 million. We know that for 2018 budget, $5.5 million of the fund balance was used. And if we have no fund balance left, as the controller claims, then that means she would have had to spend $10 million in unbudgeted fund balance in 2019 and 2020 for the city to sit without a fund balance right now. I can't confirm or deny that because we don't have any accounting numbers. But I know based on having a historic collection rate of residential and commercial taxes of 99% for the past 20 some odd years, that you would have to say that you didn't do your job in collecting taxes for the last 2 years and you blew through $10 million in fund balance. So we cannot budget the fund balance to help us balance this budget. Appropriations, we've made 25 to 50% reductions in office travel and office equipment travel, equipment expenses across the budget in light of COVID-19. We've additionally made some minor increases in technology upgrades and management services and the police department. Mount Vernon has not invested in technology in 20 years, 20 to 25 years. We are using servers, which are 25 years old. We have not upgraded software, and we have to do that now in technology, especially as we have to operate more in a remote fashion. We also want to ensure that we're able to provide the residents with the accountability and the transparency that they deserve and that they've been asking for. And so we have to make hardware and software purchases so that we can, integrate financial information, meeting information, that we can be in compliance with open law meetings, that we can have a decent and informative and stable website that does not crash because it's on a 25-year-old server. So these are some of the things that we have to do. We've also allocated a little more money in overtime for police and fire as they continue to deal with the frontline effects of COVID. We've made tweaks to the Public Works Department allocation by increasing their dumping costs due to people staying home, and it costs us more money to collect and dump the trash that we're collecting. And we've reduced fuel expenses because we know fuel costs are down. And in order to close our books, we've included $300,000 in audit fees so that we can pay the auditors to close out 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 in the city and in the Urban Renewal Agency. This is crucial for us completing the required steps needed to have our bond rating and our credit rating restored. And we also had to build in costs for mandatory step increases. 80 to 85% of our employees here in the city of Mount Vernon are in one of four unions, either police, fire, Teamsters 456, or CSEA. And they have, while they have not had a contract and had cost of living increases each year, they do have mandatory step increases, and depending on what year you're in police and fire, it can be a mandatory step increase of $35,000 in 1 year. Our police and fire and most of our municipal employees are hired at the lowest rate of any municipal workers in the county, but each year they do receive mandatory step increases, and those going from year 4 to 5 in police and fire get the biggest step increase. All of that has been budgeted into this budget. Usually the step increases are not budgeted properly into the budget, but we have properly budgeted them line by line, person by person throughout the city. It took a lot of time, but we did it. Employee benefits. We budgeted for a 15% increase in employee health benefits, but we did not have to change the financial number from the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget. We went back to 2019 expenditure reports provided by the controller based on the controller's 2019 expenditure reports. We spent about $16 million on New York State Health Insurance Program benefits. We do not know what the actual number is in 2020, but we budgeted for a 7.5% increase in 2020, and we assumed a 7.5% increase in 2020 and a 7.5% increase in 2021. And that should cover the number that we have kept in the budget. We do have an actual savings of about $900,000 in 2020, because in October of 2019, due to the controller's failure to build the water department for several years, the controller decided to discontinue paying the medical benefits for the water department and the water department had to assume paying their benefits directly. And so that's about $900,000 a year. That came off the city's rolls and went on to the water department's Board of Water Supplies rolls. So there should even be a $900,000 real savings in the 2020 budget for medical benefits that should make its way to the fund balance. Staffing positions, we added a few staffing positions and we removed some staffing positions. We have a large number of vacancies in police and fire. So we unfunded 5 positions in fire and 5 positions in police. With those savings in police and fire, we created much needed positions. We added 2 fiscal clerks, 1 in police and 1 in fire. You have a $25 million department and you have a $15 million department, but they don't have anyone working in the finance office in those departments. No company is going to run a company for $25 million without fiscal help. And so we have budgeted those positions in support of much needed police reform is being requested across the country. And even based on our police officers' request, we have put 2 social workers in the budget because a lot of what the police are required to deal with in the community when they go out are mental health and homeless. And so we put 2 mental health, homeless, domestic violence. So we have placed 2 social workers in the budget, which will allow our police department to more efficiently focus on violent crimes and other quality of life issues, while these 2 social workers can deal with providing services to the homeless, the mentally ill, and addressing the rise in domestic violence. We have also, in the spirit of greater transparency in the police department and to support police reform, we've budgeted for a crime analyst. We have a department without a crime analyst, so we are budgeting for a crime analyst so that we can continuously look at our stats, look at our hotspots, and communicate that information out and develop patrolling plans and strategies based on crime analysis. And then we have budgeted for a communications, a public information officer. The community has spoken over and over again and said they need to hear more from our public safety division as to the work that they're doing and what is happening. And in this time of disinformation and misinformation, we feel that a public information officer, a dedicated civilian, would be the best person to provide this. So with the savings that we had in step increases, with the savings that we had in eliminating 5 positions that are vacant, this is what we're doing. So this is no increase to the budget. It is actually still a savings. In the fire department, we are also bringing in a finance person who can manage that, and as well as payroll, and continue to track overtime and minimize overtime throughout the department. Some of the other positions that we have added in our budget, we've added for the first time in years a part-time inspector general at $70,000. A part-time inspector general, we are looking to contract with maybe a retired inspector general and be able to get someone with lots of experience for less money. We know a few people who are retiring and who fit that position, but we'll put out, feelers to find out who that is. We want to make sure that we're able to investigate and eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse wherever it lies in the city. We want to make sure that we are policing ourselves, and so investing in an inspector general is very important. Also, in the office of the inspector general, we will have an investigator, a part-time investigator. We are budgeting for that investigator to begin in about July, and that investigator will work with our Citizen Complaint Review Board, our CCRB, to investigate externally complaints, public safety related complaints. So we will hire an investigator, which will be independent, who will be able to investigate those complaints. All of this, again, supporting police reform. We've defunded some mechanical, some MEOs in the motor equipment operators throughout the Public Works Department. These are vacant positions. We've defunded them. City Council passed last week the tree ordinance, I believe, the tree ordinance, and so to support the tree ordinance, and the tree ordinance is very important as we see Mount Vernon is the city of homes, but we are also a tree city. And in our city, we have a lot of trees that are old, that need pruning, and some that need to be brought down, but we also need to plant new trees. And so every time a major windstorm, rainstorm, hailstorm comes through, we see a lot of downed trees, and that is at great expense. It is at risk to our residents and their properties, cars. We've seen cars damaged. So we want to make sure that we are taking preventative measures to property damage, and that we are staffing our tree crew to go around and be able to prune trees properly, as well as identify sick trees. We are elevating one of our tree trimmers from a tree trimmer to a tree surgeon. He has the proper training, so that's a $7,000 addition. And we have added one tree trimmer to the budget. That will bring us to 4 people, if this passes, who are addressing the issues of trees in our parks and in our residential and business neighborhoods. We have defunded 2 recreation maintenance workers, 1 park maintenance worker. In our sanitary sewer line, we defunded a motor equipment operator, and we have a sewer laborer, so more boots on the ground. We have transferred the traffic division from the police department to DPW as it is more appropriate. In the recreation department, due to COVID, and not really having the Dole Center and the Armory and after-school programs open in the same way, we have defunded from 2019 an assistant director of Rose Simon. We defunded the youth program director, and we have a vacant, as we've had for all of 2020, our deputy recreation commissioner's position has been vacant. We will not look to fill that position until July of this year, of 2021, because we know with COVID, even though a vaccine is coming out, it's going to take a while to ramp back up some of those activities. So we did not want to leave positions that we know we're going to have vacant in the budget and weigh a tax levy against the residents. So we have defunded, we have not eliminated, but we have defunded these positions. And I think
I'd like to speak to the
What?
law department, or
so, yes.
because you put it in, yeah.
So in summary, our priorities are to maintain essential services while improving efficiency in government operation, coupled with increasing revenue generation. We have to increase revenue generations. People can challenge some of these revenue numbers that I've put in there, but I ask you to explain why we are allowing hundreds of homes, vacant, empty homes, to continuously stay off the tax rolls and deteriorate and increase blight in our neighborhoods. We cannot call forward and call anyone a slumlord and really call forward banks that are letting vacant properties sit in our community, increasing the blight, if we, as the city of Mount Vernon, also have hundreds of homes that are sitting here that the city has foreclosed on and we're responsible for maintaining, but we are not maintaining them at a good level. Why we are not releasing them to our residents in Mount Vernon, especially our working class community and many of our young families that want to remain in our community. Why these homes are not being made available to them to purchase. These are not homes that we just want developers coming in and snatching up and holding on. We want these homes to be available to Mount Vernonites, so those who work here and who live here and who want to remain here can have an opportunity at home ownership, working with the Urban Renewal Agency and working with the County of Westchester and first-time home ownership programs. We know that we can help these families tap into some money for down payments on these houses. We want our residents to be able to take advantage of grant funds that are out there for down payments on homes, and we want them to have an opportunity for home ownership. This will return these properties to the tax rolls, and it will also bring revenue, immediate revenue into the city of Mount Vernon. And I know you want to, oh, one more thing. So we have eliminated 17 full-time positions. We've removed 17 full-time positions from the budget. We've added 10 lesser funded positions in priority areas, like I said, including the Inspector General, technology, public safety, operation, police reform, nutrition and food security. Additional positions have been added in the amount of $481,611, but these positions are strictly through federal and state grant funds that we have, that we are budgeting for in this budget, but we are transferring money from the Urban Renewal Agency over to the city of Mount Vernon, so that does not impact the budget at all. And these positions are for a homeless outreach service coordinator, a code enforcement officer, a code enforcement supervisor, what else am I missing? Code enforcement officer, code enforcement supervisor, an attorney, a housing attorney to work around code enforcement issues. These are some of the grant-funded positions that you will see in the budget, but again, they are at no cost. In the law department, we have eliminated a position of a paralegal to support $5,000 increases in our 4th and 5th Corporation Council. Right now, we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars at about $400 an hour for outside attorneys who have specialties in labor and other areas. But we need to be more competitive in being able to recruit lawyers as well as retain lawyers here in Mount Vernon who will be able to take on some of this burden, some of this load. We walked in on day one, Council Johnson, and I know you're going to speak to it. We walked in on day one and we were given over $350,000 in bills just from the Labor Council, who had held on to 2019 September, October, November, and December bills and gave them to us as a gift on day one. In the budget, we only budget annually for $100,000 for a Labor Council, but yet the city in the past 4 to 5 years has spent over $600,000 a year in Labor Council.
At least.
At least.
We don't have any historical data. I've asked the comptroller, but she hasn't given us any. But
So you asked for information from the controller and she has not given it to you. We've had a lot of unnecessary lawsuits filed by staff against the city of Mount Vernon for the controller and some of the former administrators' failure to execute agreements, to give step increases, for unfair labor practices, lawsuits that are indefensible on the city's part. It's been bad administration and bad practices, and we're having to settle those lawsuits. And we've had to use, unfortunately, or there's been a practice of using the outside labor attorneys. We have taken on a lot of those cases now, but a lot of the cases are indefensible, and so we have to settle them. We can either continue to pay law firms $400 an hour per attorney, and sometimes they have 2 attorneys in the room, to go to court and do arbitration to defend bad practices, or we can settle them, which is what our department is doing. So if you want to.
yeah, so thank you, Mayor. So as a corporation counsel on January 2nd, when I came in, I was presented with a spreadsheet that had $2.4 million outstanding in Labor Council. Immediately, my phone began ringing with lawyers claiming that we owed them all this money from 2018 and 2019. As the mayor said, historically, the city has budgeted $175,000 for contracted outside services and spent well over what they can afford to in that. Also, you'll take a look at $100,000 was budgeted in 2020 for Labor Council. It should be noted that the Labor Council told me that for the last 4 months of 2019, that they were owed $350,000. So on day one, in January, for the last quarter. So from September 2019 to December 2019, when I walked in on January 2nd, Labor Council is informing me that they had not been paid for those months upon an agreement with the prior administration. And on January 2nd, we owed them.
Administration that was in charge for the second half of
Yes, yes.
2019.
Right. And whose attorneys were paid $237,000 in 2020 budget, to which I've never approved. But anyway, I digress. So Labor Council told me, so the last letter that they gave me is that we owed them $650,000, which is probably now about $800,000. Much of this is for work that predates this administration that they were already retained on. As to the mayor's point, oftentimes you're not talking to one attorney on the case, you're talking to two. The unfortunate part, what I've been able to determine, which is very clear, historically, the city has not had either a labor relations person internally or labor council. So part of the problem is, well, the number one problem is the city is paying way more in outside counsel, and I think that definitely has to be reined in. As the mayor has said, some of this is due to political infighting in the past, where there was this wild disregard for working with the process and working within the system, like unlawful suspensions or suspensions and investigations and all these other kinds of things that are costly to defend. So to the mayor's point, to the best of my ability, I have been settling things that are indefensible so we don't continue to pay these outside counsel fees. One of the other things that I've identified as a problem is that the law department, as it is currently constructed, does not operate in an optimal way. So I will be working with the council, the mayor, and everyone to propose a complete restructure after an audit. Should be an audit. One of the things that we know is we have the most lawsuits and litigation ever. And it has been said, there's a sort of a false narrative that I have 5 lawyers that are working for me. Well, for most of the year, good part of the year, there were only 2 lawyers, which is unprecedented in the law department. I did hire 3 hires this year that came in, starting with Ms. Walters, who came in July. So for the second half, we do have new lawyers, but we have so much work in the law department. While they're very busy, some of this additional unnecessary work has to go out to litigation professionals. We don't have a litigator currently in the law department, which is why everyone needs to work within the system.
More than $100,000 to hire a litigator.
Exactly, and we need more than $100,000 to hire experienced labor counsel. Nonetheless, that's what we're going to be looking toward. But this is where we are right now, which is why the mayor has, for the sake of transparency, tried to put in the budget a doubling of the labor council. But again, I will be broke after we pay this based on past costs that have already been assigned to the department. And they have to be paid, because what happens when you don't pay your bills? You get lawsuits, and then you have to pay even more. And then one of the other things that have been happening, and I'm going to wrap up in the interest of time, is that as these lawsuits go on and when we lose, the courts have been giving interest and penalties from the date that it was due and owing. It was determined that it was due and owing. And so, as you know, in one case with PCI, where the comptroller refused to even meet with me to discuss paying, and I know Commissioner Bush had for months tried to get her to do that, she refused to even meet with me to discuss it, and the city incurred $55,000, which is equivalent of one of these positions, additional cost upon the city, and it's a real cost, and they're going to collect it. So this is the kind of thing that I've been dealing with on my first year.
So while we are very clear that it has been a challenging year to do a budget, we have put honest effort into this. We are not saying that this budget is without flaws. We are asking the controller to come to the table and continue to work with us on this budget. If she wants to blow up this budget and propose her own budget, feel free to do so. You are the chief fiscal officer of the city, as you often say. So please, if you have numbers and you have, in revenues and expenditures, and you want to make adjustments or you want to present your own budget, I invite you to do that. You are the CFO. A lot of this is your job. And unfortunately, we're doing a lot of the job of the controller because she has refused to provide us with the information and partner with us to do it. She did sit with me on multiple occasions. We worked together on 3 different versions of the budget back in January January of 2020, of this year, in January of 2020. When she got upset about some things, she stepped away from the process. Like you said, sometimes when people get angry and your kid's in the park, you take your marbles and you go home. So she worked with me, and then she took her marbles, and then she went home, and she has not worked with the administration since then. We are inviting you, Controller Reynolds, to come back to the table with the best interests of the citizens of Mount Vernon. You can make political arguments, you can create public narrative, but at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, our job as elected officials are to serve the citizens of Mount Vernon. The world is reeling from economic crisis. Mount Vernon is challenged with economic crisis. We cannot continue to sit in our corners in a boxing ring and not work together and only come out of the corners to fight. You must sit at the table. I am still willing to work with you so that we can move Mount Vernon forward together. I want to thank the council. I want to thank our President Copeland. I want to thank our Finance Committee in the persons of Councilman Griffith and Councilman Thompson for sitting with us and pouring through the numbers. We were looking, when we started this budget process, we were looking at a $13.5 million deficit, which would have incurred a 26.5% tax increase. So as I said, we had to make cuts and savings in some position. We had to move positions around for greater efficiency, but then we also have to push revenue. We have to push revenue. We cannot sit on these commercial properties. We cannot sit on these residential properties. We have to push revenue. We have to make sure that we have people going out and enforcing not only law, but building codes and doing that. Mount Vernon, we can do better, we will do better, but we have to come together and work together so that we can move Mount Vernon forward together. This is not just on me. I invite anyone to take your shot at blowing up this budget. Feel free, criticize it, feel free, take shots, feel free, but then come to the table, whoever you are and whatever position you sit in, and provide real legitimate and constructive input on how we as a community can come together in this critical time and move Mount Vernon forward. There will be lots of people who will have a lot to say, but my question is, are you willing to work? Are you only willing to sit back in the shadows or on Facebook and in lives and in different places and cast stones? Or are you willing to come and sit at the table and give real input? I'm going to be the mayor for the next 3 years. You don't have to like me, but you have to love the city of Mount Vernon enough to come and give your honest input and not just your political posturing to help us come to some resolve to make sure that we are fiscally solvent in a time that no one has ever seen. No one has ever dealt with a worldwide pandemic. No mayor alive today in Mount Vernon has dealt with a worldwide pandemic. So you can talk about what you did in past years. You can talk about what you think should be done, but until you sit in the seat and during this time and this season, you can't imagine what we've had to deal with. So if you're going to make criticisms, we also ask that you give constructive input. Even though it is silly political season, this is the opportunity for you to show yourself to be a true champion for the city of Mount Vernon and not just a champion for your own political aspirations. And with that, I submit an annual budget estimate in draft form that still needs work to be done, but we have to have something to work on. Thank you. And people have asked if we'll be putting this on the website for the city of Mount Vernon, along with the budget narrative, and at such a later date in January, we'll bring it As we go back, we'll continue to work with the council, and hopefully the controller will come to the table. And hopefully in early January, we will be able to present something that is revised, that we can vote on, to move it forward and bring it to public hearings, because it is of great necessity that we work together quickly and collaboratively to create a budget so that we can put out tax bills and begin to collect revenue for the continued operation and function of the city.
As a point of information, Madam Mayor, do you require any more to be done with item number 24? Is there a motion to be received or seconded?
No.
The presentation or just a presentation?
It's
As
just,
noted.
it's just a presentation of the estimate.
Thank you.
That's, anything else, Council President?
No, I've been reviewing, I just saw a couple of salary errors, that's all.
Mhm.
But
Okay,
based on, I thank your staff, you know, for the hard work. It's hard to operate in a tunnel. And I think this is a good first effort, so, to move our city forward. So thank you for that.
thank you. And I look
And we'll
forward to a
discuss it
little bit of
further
work.
after.
We will be burning some late night oil, and if anyone would like to send food, please do, because we're here at midnight. Not gonna poison us. just-
Yeah,
You gotta be able to laugh, guys.
right,
If you
levity,
can't laugh, then
good for the soul.
levity is important during trying times like this. And with this being the last Board of Estimate meeting from the year, based on what I know and I believe, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a Happy Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year. Everyone be safe. Continue to check on friends and family. Continue to find ways to connect, even when we are still somewhat on pause and feeling a little bit isolated. And in the midst of all of the challenges that we are all experiencing, continue to stand on the foundations of your faith, your friends, your family, and your community. We're still here in the midst of it all. We've survived, and we have lots of hope in the future for reimagining Mount Vernon, reconnecting with one another, and revitalizing our community. God bless everyone. Take care, and Happy New Year.
I'm gonna